hello to everyone and welcome. Welcome to our guests who are attending live today and also to those who are listening or watching the recording of this event. I'm Joya Dakari. I'm creator of Truth Values and the founder of our brand new Truth Values Community Online Event Series. The idea of this series, which is born out of the pandemic, is to have a way to continue building our community through online conversations. Our conversations are featuring the great things that people are doing in diversity and inclusion in STEM and also the art science space, as well as providing inspiration through fantastic role models like our three wonderful special guests we have here today. I expect our guests today who are watching and listening to this event are no stranger to many of our panelists, because I see that on the guest list, many of the people here today are from University of Ottawa. So I'd like to begin by introducing our guests. Our first guest is Professor Monica Nevins. Monica got her PhD in representation theory at MIT in 1988. After a Killam postdoctoral fellowship at University of Alberta, she joined the math department at University of Ottawa, and her research interests have grown to include post-quantum mathematical cryptography. And she's supervised over 25 graduate students and 30 undergraduate students in both areas. She's served as chair of the department, as a vice dean of the faculty, and she and her very supportive partner, and that's important, have two grown children. Monica and I also share a background at MIT, so that's very exciting for me, and I'm thrilled that she's here and to actually meet online for the very first time. So welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Maiko Serizawa. She's originally from Japan and came to Ottawa in 2017 to work on her PhD in math at the University of Ottawa. As much as she loved research in math, she felt the academic lifestyle didn't suit her. And so since completing her PhD in 2021, she works as a self-employed story writer and math coach. She's the host of a weekly show, Maiko's Story Photograph Podcast. Her passion is to touch upon a person's life through storytelling and mathematical thinking. From the challenges she faced as a woman in math, she's a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion, and she's currently working with her team to bring my show Truth Values to Ottawa. So it's such a pleasure to have Maiko here, and it's been my great joy to get to know her through working on this tour to Ottawa, and would be the first tour of my show outside the United States. Very exciting. So welcome, Maiko. And our next guest is Behnaz Rafahi. I'm working on the name. Behnaz is a fourth-year PhD student in math at U Ottawa. In her research, she's working on solving a graph theory question with algebraic topology tools. She found the joy and beauty of math when she was a high school student through puzzles and through math history. She likes to help people who want to make a more inclusive community for women. When she's not doing math, you can find her reading, cooking, or traveling. So welcome, Behnaz.
Thank you.
So Behnaz's bio mentioning her love of math takes me right into our first question today, which is, I wanted to ask all of you to share this because it's so great to start with what brings us together, which is joy in math and science. And I wondered if you might all share perhaps an early experience from your life when you found math first captivated you. Behnaz, do you want to start since you had that in your bio?
Yeah, sure. My first moment with math goes back to the time when I was a middle school student. There was a science competition happening every year in our school, and it was kind of extra activity, extra than our regular courses, and every student had to attend this exam. So I attended without any preparation, just to attend. And then the day after the exam, the names of the people who were accepted were on the board on the corridor of our school. Well, it was so crowded in front of the board, and so I didn't bother to look for my name. So, but the next day, my math teacher came into the class and said, if there's anybody who is accepted for the next round of the competition. Well, nobody raised their hand, but she said, well, I looked at the board and Behnaz, your name was on the board. Didn't you look? I said, no, I didn't look. And I was surprised and shocked that why me? I didn't prepare, I didn't study, and why nobody else from my classmates? Why me? But anyway, she met my parents and she told them that Behnaz is going to be someday is going to be something in math. So that was a very encouraging comment for me, and I still remember it till today.
Oh, what a wonderful story. Surprise, you're a math wonder. That's a great story. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And it makes me think of, well, I'll go on. I want you to share stories, everyone, to have time, because I know we're short. So let me go on to Monica. If you have a story like to share.
Oh, well, sure. Making me think back to earliest experiences in math. Okay, so always wanting to count, that's clear. But I remember being wrong. And it was when my sister was telling me what addition was about. And I thought, oh, okay, well then 6 plus 6 should be 16, because that's what made sense. That would be logical, and that would be beautiful, and that would be the right way to name the numbering system. And it's so totally wrong. And I remember thinking through, oh no, it has to be right. Oh no. And figuring out, and in some sense proving, this is a very mathematical thing to do now. Of course, my 4-year-old self was just about outrage. And I think my number line that I've had ever since was born in that time when I was trying to come up with the logic of why 6 plus 6 wouldn't be 16. I think I've got tons of those little moments when I'm just horribly wrong. And then you make this massive leap forward when you realize what's right and why you were wrong. It's like you've just changed perspective and everything looks totally different. Those are my favorite moments in learning math.
6 plus 6 equals 16.
Yeah, I think I fixed that since then, but you know.
That's great. That's a great story. And Michael, do you have a story?
Yes. For me, it was when I was 11 years old, when I first found math to be interesting. When I was a younger child, so my mom was quite eager to teach me the basic arithmetic so that I don't have to struggle at school, but I hated it. I really resisted. I really didn't like it, and I thought I really didn't like math. And then when I was 11 years old, so my dad, who is not a mathematician, whose profession is lawyer, he has fantasy about mathematics. He is interested in math, even though he's not so good at it. And he kept a few collection of books about mathematics in our family bathroom because he's a bookworm. And one day I just picked one cartoon about mathematical history, a history of geometry it was. And then I learned about something called non-Euclidean geometry, and that you can actually have a world logically consistent where you can have like more than one parallel lines passing through one point parallel to a given one, or none at all. When I saw it, I felt, wow, math is something so creative. You can think about something so different and new. And from that day on, the perspective of the subject changed, and I became interested in it.
Fascinating. Wow, that a book like that grabbed you at an early age. And you're making me think of the book Flatland, which was a favorite of mine, which gives you a perspective and a story-like perspective into a mathematical world. Maybe we could I don't know if we mention more things like that. We'll have a little notes after this in the recording section. We can put the notes for folks to look up. This is great. I'm excited to hear these stories, which are so fun. And I also wanted to ask a really important question of all of you today, which is something that a question we came upon in our adventures with the Truth Values Community Program Live, where we had the live show, and then we had a discussion afterwards. And something that always was profoundly helpful in discussion was to think of ask our panelists if they could think of a time when they faced a challenge in their mathematical endeavors or their academic or work or professional endeavors, or school endeavors, and how they overcame it or what they did to address it. It always seemed to open such a fascinating window into I don't know, role models and ways to persist. And so I was wondering if we could start with Monica. If you have a story like that.
Sure, and indeed these things are tough to answer, but then I thought about those times when there have been the big challenges in my career, those moments when you're thinking, maybe it's time to shelve this, and something in common of those is, I would say, I really feel a need to give. I want to help the world. I want to have an impact. I want to make the world a better place. And yet as a career, I've chosen to study something, or rather my heart has chosen to study an area of pure mathematics that is not going to cure cancer. Although if you're from a funding agency, actually in 100 years, it will be integral. But it was really hard to reconcile. There were various points in my undergraduate degree. There's someone that said, okay, now those courses were so much fun, but it's time to grow up and focus on something that's going to be, practical and useful. And this is beautiful. This is something that makes my heart sing. I mean, I'm thinking about that first group theory course, which was like, this is what I dreamed math was going to be like. All this stuff and all those moments there. Partially, I think I have to give due credit to the people who just serendipitously or not said the encouraging word at that moment when I was feeling so low, that told me, oh, no, you better take that class. You're really good. You're going to have a good time in that class and it'll pay off. Or just random encouragement to keep going. But another part of it was to realize that, yes, I need to give, but I have a lot to give, and I can put my heart and soul into those parts of my job that really do have an impact, whether it's the teaching or working with students or changing those university policies for the better. I can put a lot there, and and that's the selfless part of me, and answering to that need that I have. And then I can have a part of me that does the stuff that I worry is selfish, to work on these problems that are not immediately going to have an impact on the world. And even when you realize that as you're working on these problems, they're very hard. It's very easy to say, oh, well, this is a very hard problem and it doesn't really matter. So maybe I should do something else. That I think is a continuous struggle in there. But I'm reconciling over the years that I am allowed to have many aspects to my personality, and not all of them have to be that selfless drive. But I hope I do enough.
Oh, so the challenge is feeling like, oh, well, math isn't selfless enough, that it's not universal enough to cure cancer or to do something humanitarian I see.
I don't know if that's it's certainly not a uniquely female perspective, but I will say it's resonated with me and with other women that I know, that we want to help and to make the world better, and that's such a driving force.
Fascinating. That's fascinating. And so allowing the different parts of yourself to exist, even the parts that aren't actively saving humanity at this very moment. Right. That's a great message. Well, let me ask Maiko, do you have a sort of a story about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it?
Yes, but can I just say a few words on what Monica shared just
Yeah,
now?
absolutely.
I just wanted to say that from a student point of view, just having somebody who is absolutely like joyfully immersed in a research topic, just looking at that energy is very much, it's resource for us students. So I thought that maybe this research thing, which is the selfish part, is just by doing that also impacts the people around that person. I feel that from the other side. I wanted to just say that.
That's a great observation. I mean, it's a little bit like us talking about joy in math, right? Joy. The joy is really important, and it's important in teaching, and it's important to see it in others.
Yeah.
And inspire it in yourself, rekindle it in yourself. Yeah.
That's so true.
But do you have a story about your own
struggle? Yes.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a different kind of challenge from what was just shared. Mine was a sense of isolation has been the challenge for me on my journey. So I did my undergraduate study in Japan, and then I did my master's in a university in UK, and then I did my PhD in Canada. So I moved to different places, but all through the time I felt isolated. What is this isolation? This is, that in a pure math classroom, usually there are very, very, very few female students. And the impact of that to me was that I really couldn't connect with my classmates as I would normally do with my other friends. And the lack of deep emotional connection with people who are studying with me really affected my productivity and emotional health at one point. And how I solved this problem, I would say it's only been partially solved, but my partial solution to this happened during my PhD study. So I joined Women in Math Club, which was newly organized at the time by other two students. And the experience of joining this club really, really changed my experience at university, because through talking and sharing what I was feeling with other students and hearing other students facing some similar experiences, but from different angles, made me feel seen and heard. And I, from that point on, the sense of isolation started to become like the power of that sense of isolation started to fade away as I gained connection with some students around me. And this journey still goes on. And I really, because of this experience, I'm so passionate about bringing your play, Joya, to University of Ottawa, so that people can have more and more of this conversation. And I really feel that this probably isn't just for girls. I think it's going to benefit all the students in math.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. That was a fascinating story about what you face. I think it's so apropos today too, because wow, now we're in this weird pandemic situation when, people are more isolated than ever. I mean, not just students, but everyone. And you also make me think of at one point when I was, just I'm an artist, that's what I do now, but I'm running small business, theoretically arts business, but it's a business, and joined a group of women entrepreneurs. And this was so profoundly helpful to me. I said to myself, if I had had that when I was in math grad school, I don't know, it might have been different. So it makes me think of that. And I really appreciate your comment. And it's so important to get together and not be so isolated, because that's a really rough thing to be the only one or the only woman. Well, finally, I want to get to Banaz. I'm looking at our schedule, so I should move on. Do you have some story about similar like this that you might share with our audience?
Yeah, sure. My experience is more mathematical. It goes back to the first year of my undergrad degree. So I was so energetic and so happy to be accepted at the university that I wanted. And at the first year, I was kind of reckless, and I was like hanging out with my friends all the time. But my degrees were very low. And at that time, I didn't realize that there's a big difference between studying for high school courses and university courses, and especially that most of our courses were math. At the second year, where our TAs were from undergrad students. They were very good students. So they were our TAs, and we became friends. And then they helped me, and I learned from them that learning math is not just, it's also about solving lots of exercises and reading a lot, working harder. And I started working harder. Our textbook, I tried to solve all the exercises, and also I tried to reach out to other resources, to read more examples, to read more questions, problems, and study harder. I really started like seizing every minute I had, like between lunch and the next course. There was 30 minutes, and I went to library. I just looked at the lecture I just went to, or I was preparing for the next lecture. So I seized every minute. I was all the time at the library, and it really affected my grades. So like it came up from D to A.
by putting in lots of extra time. And
yeah,
if I know, I hear you. That's what it takes sometimes, is just really, really putting in all that time and making it happen. But it's great when you have that kind of energy and drive, and it's inspiring. Well, let's see. I guess we are to Q&A time. If anyone would like to ask a question, if you might put your question, if you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, it says Q&A. And if you might put your question in that section, I'd really appreciate it. But I can also look in the chat. I see people in the chat as well. But it would be helpful if you put it in the Q&A section if you're so inclined. I see Jane McDonald says, passion brings you to math. Practice makes you good at it. Thank you, Banaz. That's great. And I also have some questions, more questions as we wait for questions. I wanted to ask, one of the reasons that also I'm doing this series is that I'm interested in people who touch on the combination of art and science, people who combine those things. And we have that in Maiko. She has a podcast and in which she compares mathematical thinking with storytelling and sort of a literary perspective. And I wondered if you might just mention, let people know about your podcast and how that combination happens, math and literature. Does it make sense?
It does make sense. But I have to tell you that this podcast, Michael's Story Photograph podcast, this isn't really about math. So it's purely like a me telling story from my daily observation, some insightful moment. And this connection between, so yes, I am both mathematician and an artist. In my case, I am a writer. So these two are connected inside of me. And I think I'm drawn to storytelling in the same way as I'm drawn to mathematical thinking. But I have to tell you the truth, I'm still figuring this out, how like this comparison. I just know that these two are connected inside of me, and I want to know more how they may come together. Because I believe that both of these things are very, very basic to our life, like storytelling or mathematical thinking, whether you are aware of it or not. And they kind of touch upon our, like the way we see our life. And I think I'm drawn to this power in both.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and inspiring. Me too. Very much so. Sort of spent my whole life on that. I see we have some more questions, so I want to get to them. How important has it been for each of you to have women mathematicians as role models for your career success? Interesting. Would anyone like to answer that? I can call on Banaz, perhaps. Do you have something you'd like to say about that question?
I guess my role model, as I said, the story, it goes back to the math teacher I mentioned. She was a female math person, and it was a big hit for me. I mean, I remember looking up to her at our class. She was a firm person, very dedicated to her work, but still caring. And I really enjoyed this caring and be dedicated to the work, like the contrast, but they complete each other. And it was always nice. I always thought about it, that I should be caring and also much dedicated to the hard work of math, because math is kind of, it is hard, and people might think you're not flexible or something, but this connection always makes it beautiful. So this kind of thing was always in my mind.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I guess I'll ask you, Monica or Maiko, do you have an answer for that same question?
Well, maybe I'll come. I came from a generation where there weren't too many, I didn't have too many female math professors, but corresponding to something that Maiko was talking about, I was incredibly blessed that just by chance, there was always a group of 2 or 3 other women in my cohort, and we bonded over things. We had the same challenges. And so in some sense, those were role models. I will say that my mathematical role models are these amazing people that I've had a chance to work with, my male professors who are just so amazing in undergraduate, my outstanding supervisor who's just everything I want to be, and all these people that I've had a chance to work with. But having that cohort of female students is what made it, well, of course, we're all doing this and it's all going to work out fine. And so that combating the isolation from having that team was really quite important.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Maiko, do you have an answer to that question, or would you like to answer?
I think I benefited from both male and female role models, but especially as I grew older, and when things got tougher in terms of isolation and all, it did impact me to have somebody around myself, and also somebody in the faculty or in a teaching position, women thriving, like being themselves and pursuing their interest and also making good connections with her colleagues. Yeah, looking at those things like gave me hope from time to time when I needed it. So yes, definitely I was supported by those.
Wow. Well, thank you all for that answer to that question. Let's see. We are kind of coming up to the end. Oh, all sorts of wonderful questions here. Someone asked, Katerina, well, that last question, I should say, is by our next guest for next month. I hope everyone will come on the 28th of February. That question was from Margaret, and I've got to get her name right. Tachek, I think, is correct. I haven't had a chance to just check that out. But anyhow, it's from our next guest for next month, who runs a wonderful program at Clemson University for diversity and inclusion in STEM. And our next question is from Katerina. I'm not going to try her last name. Well, Stasodjevic, perhaps. Sorry, Katerina, that's wrong. Goodness. Oh, she says it's good. Okay. How do you deal with roadblocks in your research? Pure math requires some creativity, so you can have blocks in that sense. Does anyone, maybe one person could answer that. I want to keep us to time. If you have an answer to that question, does anyone?
I'm always happy to chip in and answer. I've had more roadblocks than you can imagine.
Starting with 6 + 6 = 6.
Starting with 6 + 6,
yeah.
you know. And you know, it's amazing. You have to let yourself go and have the space to be creative. It's absolutely true. As soon as you start putting the clenchers on, oh, I have to solve this right now or my world will end, it just doesn't flow as well. But you need that room to ask the question and to be curious about it. Like, I'm trying to solve something right now, actually, and I don't see the answer. I cannot figure out how to get past it, but I get curious about these little details on the side, and they take me on these little meandering paths. And eventually some of those paths come out into, oh, that's what I was supposed to be thinking about. So maybe it is about its time and space and feeling comfortable being curious, remembering that we're in it for the curiosity.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for that wonderful answer. I appreciate that. I'll move on quickly so that we can get to our questions, and then we'll close up this one. A friend of mine, and I think yours, Monica, David Bogan, asked a question here. Monica, does good teaching feel like storytelling to you? Talk about role models. He's one of mine. Would you like
yes,
to that?
Absolutely. And we all agree. I mean, yes, to teach is to tell the story. To tell a story is to teach. And it's true for Maiko's storytelling as much as it is in a calculus class or a ring theory class. That's what makes it all come to life, and it makes it feel wonderful. Even research sometimes feels like telling a pretty good story.
That's wonderful. And I'll go to the next question. This is from Jane McDonald. I know that many women struggle within the mathematics community due to historical exclusivity and ongoing adversity that is either a consequence of this historical exclusivity or a present-day societal culture. Clubs like the Women in Mathematics Club are created for safe spaces and to create supporting communities. How do you think these communities affect the larger mathematical community and break exclusive practices? I wonder if our friends here from the Math Club of Ottawa, Banaz and Maiko, might answer that one. Would you like to? What do you think? You'll have to unmute.
Yes, so the greater impact to the larger community. I do believe that, you know, having this kind of community, a place where people can genuinely connect with each other, impacts each one of us, like from inside out. So it really changes the way we look at our experiences on a daily basis. So when that changes, the way we communicate with other people also changes. And if we can have more space within us, we can even initiate conversation with other people who are initially not so open or maybe not aware of some challenges faced by some groups of people in the community. So in that sense, this is the first step, I feel, to have this kind of small community where people can genuinely show up for each other. And from there, I think it has a ripple effect, and it will become something bigger from person to person.
Beautiful. Yes, having that space for oneself and one's close community helps us reach out to others and nurtures us enough to have the strength to do that and then make the entire community better. Banaz, would you like to add anything or
Yeah, just a quick comment. Michael touched on quickly on the awareness, and I would like to insist on this impact of awareness, because this is so important to change mindset or to change a community. The first thing, the first step, I believe, is that awareness. People need to know there are some issues. And we figured out in our conversations in Women in Math Cup that there are some people that they are not aware, well, that like people, like women are facing some difficulties or there are some issues. So the first thing, I guess, that this kind of club is helpful is to bring the awareness to the community.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, bringing people's awareness towards women in math and the things that women face. Well, wonderful. I'm gonna, in the interest of time, just close up our conversation today. And thank you all for joining us, and to Monica, to Maiko, and to Banaz for being our special guests, and all of you for attending here today, and to those of you who are listening or watching in a recording. I so appreciate it. I also need to give a shout out today for one of my beloved sponsors, which is the Julia Robinson Math Festival. I hope you might check that out. And I want to also mention that my company is currently on a mission to continue this project to create supportive community for equality in STEM through art and science and conversation, and a documentary about my adventures with this show, Truth Values. And I hope that you might consider supporting us. Just to do that, go to truthvalues.org, click support, and you can donate there. And also, please join us for our next installment in this series, as I mentioned, featuring the great things that Margaret Tachak is doing at Clemson University via their program called Clemson Tigers Advance. That's on February 28th. I hope you'll join us. And to do so, these are member events. So go to truthvalues.org and see on the homepage, it'll have a button there that says join free, and all you have to do is sign up, and then you'll get an invitation. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you all, hopefully next month. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.